That's awesome. Yep.
But this is stuff we can all talk about. These are just some questions that the fans have been sending in.
Yep.
And I'm just going to kick it over to Matt right now. He can ask, and we can just kick it around.
And this is for everybody, including Anna. As a game master, how long do you spend prior to a game session prepping for your players? And there's a tag on to that. Have you spent more or less time, and how did that affect your game? So we'll go to our guest first, Anna.
For me, it depends if I'm having, it's one of the first, if it's, I start a new campaign in a new area of Greyhawks, I'm breaking new grounds. Then I might spend 40 hours preparing the first session, so to speak. But then follow-up sessions will be less and less, because then I know the NPCs, I have sketched out the area and so on. So then I might need hardly any preparation. I would just think about a little bit what happened last time, and also what's going to what are the possibilities for the next time, so to speak. And then it's short little note, make sure the players write down what happens. That's one of the things. So I always hand out XP for players who make me wonderful notes of what happens, so to speak. So that's takes down on prep time a lot. So it's, for me, it's the more you're into the campaign, the easier it gets. Then sessions basically play themselves after a while. But the first one's lots of work, several weeks of work for me.
Is easy for you to maneuver or to change things when your players do something unexpected for you?
Yes, because I run a sandbox, so I don't assume that will be one outcome. I have no clue on how the campaign will end or anything. I just create a bit of a world for the players to play in, and all the stuff that are there, and just let it happen. That's why I need to front load a hell of a lot of stuff, and
Sure.
and then just let the players play with it. But so there's a lot of, but the good thing with that is that a lot of that work can be reused later, even if the players run off and run in one random direction and stay on that course. I can place the next campaign in the same area and have basically, I can reuse all the prep. So that's why I prep campaigns in different areas, and then I can kind of put more and more stuff into it. So it's a lot of front load that pays off over time.
Yeah, I can absolutely see that. And my answer will be the exact opposite of what you just said. So I will get
yeah, but it depends on how you run the game. If you're story driven rather than run the sandbox, then you need to do the opposite.
Yeah, for sure. Jimmy, what about you?
What's that?
So we have this segment called Questions from the Couch, in which all of our members answer one specific question.
Captain.
I was looking at something trying to figure out the contest, and you just softballed me upside the head there while I wasn't listening. I apologize. Yep. I got caught. So
I will give you a second to think about, as a game master, how long do you spend prior to a game session prepping for your players?
Oh, I answered that on the Facebook page, and the answer was, what is this word prep?
You're a seat of a pants GM or DM. So, that's awesome.
Yeah, I'll tell you, to be honest with the stream and the games I'm running, it's mostly almost strictly all the modules. And so I have gone in and so yes, it is some reading up beforehand. They're getting to know the modules now, running them over and over. It's making it easier to know what's coming up and where the players can go, because I've got a limited area where I'm going to keep them at, not true railroading, but I am going to keep them inside boundaries, so to speak, to accomplish the game. And so, yeah, for me on the prep side, definitely different from what Danny would be doing, who is prepping out and running a much bigger arena than I am. There's no doubt. So 20 sides. Thanks for the raid.
No, that's good. That's a good answer. There's two completely opposite paradigms there, where you're talking sandbox and let the players do what they want, and the story-driven module we won't go so far as to say railroad, but there's specific start and ends.
That's true.
I think that's two different DM styles. There's nothing wrong with either one of them at all. Danny, what about you?
So I'll keep this mercifully short. I don't run modules generally. I tend to start with a theme that is drawn from current events. even though I run a high fantasy game. So like one of the things that I've been thinking about the last few years is the concepts of liberty and tyranny. So most of my games have that as their central core. There's a force for one and a force for the other.
Yep.
And then I will just watch movies. I'll read books. I'll pull snippets, and I just keep index cards laying everywhere in my house, and I just jot little notes down. And when I've got about 20 notes, that's my mind map. And I just pick a spot. Sometimes I pick it randomly. I'll just literally walk up to the board with my eyes closed and point, and that's where the game's going to start. And then it's all about creating characters. So the prep that I do is I take 2 or 3 sessions to make characters with the players. And the first session we do about a third of their character sheet, and then we play a little bit and we figure out why you have that background. They don't pick one, they earn one, and so on and so forth. So by the time we get to second level, which is where we emerge usually from this, because I hate playing first level campaigns anymore, they all know each other, hate each other, love each other. They know secrets from each other. They know all sorts of things. And I haven't prepped much more than probably on the game 2 or 3 hours. And this is for like a 10-week, thing. And then we just start and I see what they do. And whatever they do, I just add to it. The mind map grows, and I just make little notes of things they've done, things they can do. It's a sandbox for sure. And so I would say that I prep about an hour or so in between games. And I probably prep about 5 hours before games, but then I do character development for like 18 hours, 3 6-hour sessions probably.
Yep.
But I'm a theater of the mind runner. I mean, I have maps. I can run any kind of game. I got more fucking done Dwarven Forge terrain than you can shake a stick at. And I use that every once in a while. That's great. But usually it's just sketching on the whiteboard, talking, getting people to nod. Okay, we're all in the same space, and then we just play through. So,
yeah, and we've talked about that before, and I really envy your ability to do that, run the games, and more specifically, create that immersive world that you do. Because I am, like I said, the opposite of what Anna was talking about before, in that I don't run modules like Jimmy, so I don't pick up an adventure and run it. I tend to write my own stuff, but it's all story driven. So I have a start and an end point, and I know where I have left and right bounds, which is unfortunate. I don't necessarily like to play that way. I just don't have a ton of time to prep if I'm going to run something. So I'll write my own adventure. I'll make my own maps. I'll create my own story, maybe even my own monsters, but it definitely has its left and right bounds. And then I'm like, oh, hey, I've got a game session tonight. I better go make the map. And so, I spend an hour or 2 hours before the session trying to create the maps. And for me, this entire episode that we've been running, this entire conversation we've been having tonight has resonated with me greatly, because I live and breathe by my maps. I can talk a story to just about anything that I have in front of me. But I have to have the maps. And that was one of the other questions. It doesn't look like we're going to be able to get to it, but that was one of the other questions I had was, are the old school black and white maps with just pencil hex or pencil square 5-foot squares, are those sufficient, or do you prefer these really detailed maps that you can get down to you can see the cutlery on the table? And for me, my answer to that, to kind of sum up how I run a game, I want as much detail as possible. So when a person says, hey, what's that red dot there? Oh, that's a mushroom by the, it's a mushroom outside the table or outside the building, whatever. So I'm kind of I'm a little bit in between, sounds like everybody. So that's really cool. We got 4 game masters here with 4 completely different methods of prep.
Yep.
Really way to end this session.
I feel like if I'm showing it to the players, I want it to look like one of Anna's maps. If I'm using it only for myself, those old non-repro blue ones from 1981, they're perfectly fine.
When it comes to dungeon maps, I love to do. I had these plastic tiles that you draw using dry erase markers on, and it was perfect. I described the things as I drew, and you could just extend it in any direction, so the players had no clue of which direction to go. And I just have a little sketch, and that was it. And then I simply filled it in as I spoke and as we drew the what happened, so to speak. And to me, that was a wonderful way of getting my creativity out and if the game kind of continued to flow while I was doing it. That was not waiting. And the cool thing is I drew a lot of areas. I showed the Greyhawk map, and then I kind of drew the city or the village or whatever as they were going. And I also used my cell phone to just take pictures of it. And then I put that aside and used that as a reference for when they came back 10 years later, it looked the same way. And in real time, so to speak, if they come back to the same area. And that's important. So you have consistency. When you run a sandbox, you have to have consistency. You have to feel like it's not reinvented. It's the same world, just 6 months later, whatever it is in game time. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Well, great. I would just like to say from all the wizards here, thank you so much, Anna, for being here tonight. As we said earlier in the show, Anna is the curator and creator of probably the most ambitious and awesomely detailed and beautiful to dive deep into Greyhawk and Flenass maps that you will ever find. We'll definitely get a link up for that. And also her work with Wolfgang Bauer's Cobalt Press on the Midgard stuff and other places. I'm sure you can find more at her address. We'll get that up as well.